Okay, y'all, so we want to thank y'all for tuning in for another segment of the all-new, brand-new James Ayers Show, where not only do we talk about the things that are bothering me, but we also talk about the things that are bothering you. And on tonight's show, y'all, I told y'all today I was going to be going out there to Collin County Courthouse for Karmelo Anthony's trial, all right? And today, y'all, I got some special guests with me today. If you would, I'm going to start with you, Miss Bates. If you would, you'll just introduce yourself, please.
Hello, good evening. I had to think about what time it was. So good evening to you all. I'm glad to be here with you all. I'm a resident in the area. I'm going to leave off all of my titles because I am representing myself tonight. So I won't mention what organizations I'm associated with, but I am a leader in the community.
Sounds good. How about you, Ebony? You'll probably need to unmute your mic, Ebony. How about you, First Lady Boss? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. My name is Erica, but I go by First Lady Boss. Today was my first time participating, and I met some wonderful people, and I want to thank you for the invite, and hello to everyone.
Okay, and EJ?
Hello, I'm just an avid supporter and here to be advised on all the news that you guys can share over the last couple of days.
And last but not least, how about you, Val?
Hi, everyone. I'm Velma, but all my friends call me Val. A big supporter. Actually, Camilla is my adopted son. Just joking. But I've been following from day one. I pray. I follow everything. I know what's going on. I'm not blind. I'm spiritually, my eyes are open, so I know what's going on. So I'm here to support, to say something, and it was nice meeting a lot of you guys at the courthouse today.
All right, great. So y'all, listen, today, y'all, man, we're going to be breaking down exactly what we saw and what we witnessed right there with our own either 2 eyes or our own 4 eyes, right there in the courthouse in Collin County, y'all. And before we get started, y'all, listen, I want to go ahead and play this just to go ahead and give us context on what the topics are today that we're going to be talking about.
Both prosecutors and the defense in this case presented their case using a motion for a new trial hearing to expose the violent backgrounds of both Anthony and Austin Metcalf.
JD Miles has been in the courtroom all day, and he joins us now live with the latest. JD, there is a lot to unpack here.
There was a private off-the-record agreement between attorneys for Karmelo Anthony and prosecutors to keep the sordid backgrounds of the killer and the victim out of the ear of the jury and the public, to focus solely on the murder trial and what happened under that tent at the Frisco High School track meet last year. But now there's in this motion for a new trial, the background reports are being released, and defense is going first, releasing 20 pages now of Austin Metcalf's behavioral history. Karmelo Anthony was dressed in a suit and tie for this morning's hearing, which began with the defense arguing that efforts by the trial judge and prosecutors to combat threats and deal with disruptions actually prevented Anthony from getting an open and fair trial. But bombshell testimony came this afternoon from Anthony's trial attorney, Mike Howard, about Austin Metcalf's background report that was never presented to the jury. CBS News Texas has also learned new details about Austin Metcalf's background. Metcalf and his brother Hunter were once caught spray painting graffiti, including KKK Kill All Blacks and Heil Hitler, along with the N-word, and were sentenced to 12 months of juvenile probation. Records reveal they reportedly told authorities, "We did some dumb stuff. We did some vandalism." There are several documented instances of Austin using racial slurs in school. And in 2023, Austin was accused of bullying a black student in class. In 2018, while still in elementary school, Austin and his brother were accused of bullying and assaulting a female, which led to his arrest. During an argument in 2024 with another female student, Austin allegedly knocked her to the ground and punched her in the stomach. He was also kicked out of a football game and texted someone later, "I was about to beat the expletive out of those kids." At a previous track meet, when another student alerted Austin that someone not on their team, quote, "behind our bench was talking wild," Austin reportedly replied, "Kill that MF." During the 2023-2024 school year, he received in-school suspension twice. School disciplinary records from April 2022 to May 2024 reveal that Austin reportedly called a teacher the B word and used profanity. He told a school official that he couldn't control it and wasn't aware that it was coming out of his mouth. In 2024, on at least 5 occasions, Austin saw a counselor regarding his anger and rage during a football game. In 2021, he got banned from attending basketball games for a season after yelling profanity at a player. Metcalf also got suspended after he and another student were talking about bringing a gun to school the following day.
Well, we understand that prosecutors, meanwhile, they do have a 75-page character dossier on Karmelo Anthony, which they promised to present as well. That document shows that on the morning of the stabbing, Anthony sent out a text saying that he was, quote, low-key on the verge, and that his girlfriend went to their school principal to complain that he had been stalking her because she broke up with him. Of course, we'll keep you posted on all of those developments, and we will continue to follow this hearing very closely. For updates, stay with CBS News Texas on air and online at CBS News Texas.
All right, y'all. So, taking it from the top, y'all. Here's what we saw. I was at the courthouse this morning, probably I'll say about 7:30. And about 8:58, we made our way into the actual foyer of the courtroom. About 8:58, they're actually going through all their housekeeping, and they discussed the audio issues because in the previous days before, like I've told you guys, we had some issues with the audio to where as if on certain parts of the video where they were Russell Wilson was giving his testimony, or it almost felt like right when things were about to get juicy, then the TV would either go off or we would leave audio. And so they addressed that, and they kind of explained to us why all of that was happening. All right. And so we went through the housekeeping, y'all, and y'all gotta bear with me because this is what I'm going off of my notes from court today. For those of you guys that are joining me on the live today, y'all saw I had this with me. And so that's what we're gonna be going over. First question though, out the gate though, first person that they call as a witness this morning was, we'll call him Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson was the IT guy for Collin County Courthouse. Okay. And with him coming out first, he had some, things to say that kind of like blindsided him as well, because come to find out, Mr. Jackson was fired and terminating for leaking some information to, if I'm not mistaken, it was AP News and one of the other, some more content creators that were just basically calling in to find out what days would Karmelo be having his trial. And come to find out, they're saying that he leaked that information, and after leaking that information, he was terminated. Anything you want to add to that, Crystal?
So the AP News, the Associated Press. So basically, he described during the hearing today that, and I want to describe it the way he did because you all will be able to relate. Basically, this is a normal procedure for him when there are hearings. What he explained is when the news outlet reached out to him to ask for the hearing schedule, he put something together to respond to the request, and they're following anybody else that would ask for it. All he did was cut and paste and sent them the same thing. So he did that with the AP News, the Associated Press. He did that. Then, and they referred to the Associated Press as a legacy news station. But then there came a request, and I believe they referred to Christopher King, attorney. That's going to be important. So we're going to get this right in this session because that comes up attorney Christopher King also made a request, and he also does media and has a show and does online. He has a radio show or something as well. So he also had made a media request as well because he has media credentials. And so the gentleman, Mr. Jackson, sent him the exact same thing. It was important that during that particular session of the trial today, the defense attorney showed the document stating what parameters, and I think it might have been part of the gag process or just what their rules were for this particular trial. He highlighted where it stated things that were permitted. Matter of fact, I think I wrote that down. I actually did. It's in my notes. James talked about his notes. Here mine are, and I got pages and pages of them. But yes, he stated in his, I wrote it down somewhere, but basically it was just stating, it highlighted that those were things that were actually permitted. And also during that particular time when the defense came back and questioned him again, when they terminated him, Mr. Jackson, they didn't give him the opportunity to respond. They didn't, because they threatened to hold him in contempt and put him in jail for 6 months. Behind this. And so the defense attorney, Mr. Russell, asked Wilson, well, did they give you the opportunity to bring your lawyers in? Did they give you any documentation on what your violation was? Did they give you anything in writing? None of that took place. So basically, he lost his job, and they kept using the term "bad actors." We should have released a document of terminology because they use the terminology of bad actors constantly during the day.
I've got some.
Right.
Yeah, I got some that I want to add.
Actors, absolutely. So they said bad actors.
Let me do this.
Wanted him to discriminate between who he sent those records to.
One second here before you move forward. I want to back this up, and this is why I thought this was so important for us to get on this live together. Because listen, your notes ain't my notes, and my notes definitely are not your notes. I'm seeing that now. But here's what I need to address. Let's talk about the termination of Mr. Jackson and how the DA, the prosecutors, they talked about just a wonderful young man he was. He was just an outstanding, upstanding human being. However, when it was time for them to fire and to terminate Mr. Jackson, they told Mr. Jackson, we need you to come go with us and come talk to us. And when Mr. Jackson went in there, Mr. Jackson noticed one thing that they had when he went to visit with them. Mr. Jackson noticed that they had a manila folder. Y'all know usually when you see them legal manila folders, you would think that there's something important in there. It's something about to go down. Well, guess what? It was one piece of paper inside of that manila folder. And when he opened it up, it said something along the lines, and y'all quote me, y'all were in there too. It said something along the lines as if your termination is effective immediately. Where you at, Ebony?
I'm here. I'm following. That's exactly what happened.
All right. And so, and moving forward, they talked about, how in the proceedings, they're saying that a lot of these things, they were relying on off-record proceedings. We just need to put that in the chat. Somebody put that in the chat. That's one of those words, Ms. Bates, that you were talking about. Off-record proceedings. Now, all of this, it just took me by surprise, y'all. I mean, it almost knocked me off of my feet because I've never heard of anything like this before. When you talk about off-record proceedings, to me, that just sounds like something that's kind of different.
They used the word shadow.
It's called a shadow docket, to be honest. You're right. And one of the things that Russell Wilson was just trying to narrow down on how that just violates the laws for them to, go about doing that. And, they talked about the Waller analysis. the decision, that warrants the closure, the things that would actually make the most or the biggest difference inside of the case. They talked about that, and a lot of those things that made the most difference in the case, it was not disclosed for Karmelo Anthony's first trial.
So one thing that was important about the Waller analysis, and I wanted to look up how you correctly spelled that, but basically there were claims that were made specifically saying that, everybody was under threat. It was a threat here, or it was a threat there. I was concerned about somebody's safety, blah, blah, blah. What was explained by the defense team was that if that were the case, they had a legal responsibility to make a formal filing documenting that. None of that took place. For them to claim, and then from my understanding, I'll let somebody else speak on it because I wasn't very clear on it. And it sounds like there's a time as to when that's supposed to be filed with those concerns in it. And so there was no record. They made mention of complaints against the judges, which we all know. I think there was a Judge Tucker. We all know because that was in the news that there was some, she was threatened or what have you, but that was documented. But for this particular portion of the trial, complaints that there were threats against various people, whether that was the defense team, the plaintiff's team, or Karmelo or the Metcalf family, none of that was documented. And that is a requirement from what I understand from what was shared with us today by the defense team.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. Russell Wilson said verbatim that there was zero records on file of any of the conversation or most of the conversations that they had, and what they also called, and we'll get to that in a second, the gentleman's agreement.
And they also mentioned there was at least 12 meetings that Carmelo was not privy to. Another thing that they brought up was, you know, they use these claims of threats in order to justify barring the public from the trial, whatever. But a good point that Wilson brought up was there are other legal avenues that you can use to protect the public, such as order of protection, or there's other things that you can do that you could still continue the trial and give the public access to the trial. So they violated Carmelo's rights just based on that. And plus, these threats are not even documented.
And not only that, y'all, when I was having a discussion, I won't say with who, because they'll be getting a termination notice, but they continued throughout the day to try to make this claim that they were concerned about filing motions or whatever, like they were supposed to, documenting things because of the security concern, right? So basically, what they were required to do, they claimed they couldn't do for this trial because of security, this, that, and the other. It made me sit there and wonder, well, is this entity even safe enough to be running? Should the doors of the Collin County Courthouse even be open? Are they even competent enough to preserve and keep safe the files that they come in? Because what they were required to do should be daily procedure, should be what they're doing each and every day. For me, I compared it to us sending information to the IRS or to the United States government agent or agency for something. They have a due diligence. They have a requirement to protect records. So what they were stating was they didn't have the know-how, the resources, or didn't know, or could not safely keep these records safe and secure without it getting to the public. Well, that's their responsibility. And if they can't do that, then maybe they need to increase the budget, get it done, or they need to shut it down because that's part of what they're That's part of their responsibility. They're required to do that. So to say that they didn't do it because of all these different excuses, well, how are y'all running this courthouse? Because it would make me question, is anybody's record safe with you all? Because this should be normal procedure for you all. They're not asking you all to do something you haven't done. Now, I will say, because again, for me, in this space, I want to be able to share information as we received it so you can process it the way that you want to process it. One thing that they did state was, and we have to give them that because they stated, and I want to share with you, they said this particular case was like something they never experienced before. They never handled a high profile case on this level. So even Mr. Jackson talked about it, and a couple of others. Well, it was referred to that this was different from the perspective they never dealt with a case on this level. I get that, but keeping documents and people's information safe ought to be something you're dealing with each and every day. And the way the United States government is talking about how different systems are being hacked, you would think that they would have made that a high priority to make sure electronic files are kept safe. It's a county courthouse.
You know, you're right, and you know, as we're going to add another word here to our list too, because everything was done off the record, right? They had something, you know, and again, y'all, I ain't never heard nothing like this in my life either, but they got something, y'all, they call it old school paper. Y'all remember that? They say it was an old school paper. There was an old school way where, you know, a lot of things, they weren't done according to procedure. They were kind of like done, I want to say over there on the back alley somewhere, but it was back there in the judge's chamber or whatever that they would do. And when they felt like they were getting ready to have a disagreement, the prosecutor and the defense, when they felt like they were getting ready to have a disagreement, what they would do is they would actually go and say, hey, listen, you know, we're going to go back over here to the judge's, you know, chamber, and then we're going to see if we can hash it out. And, you know, it got to the point to where as if in these private meetings or whatever they were calling them, it got to the point to where as if it was almost like a little a shouting match or an argument or something that they were having. And it even they're saying, even it came out in court that it made Karmelo a little bit unsure about what was going on because he didn't know at that point because he had seen him arguing. And Russell Wilson said that while y'all were back there doing all that cursing and hollering, and that's his exact words from court. While he said that made Karmelo Anthony feel not sure about, you know, what was going on. And that was part of the reason why Karmelo Anthony, he did not testify because he didn't feel like he was going to get a good trial. And listen, you got your attorneys, the people that you didn't hire and spend thousands of dollars to, you know, represent you. And you got them out here, they out here kicking and scratching and fighting and pulling each other's eyeballs out. And then I would feel uncomfortable too if I had to witness or watch that.
Right. And then you all, I know my thing is blurred a little bit, but I'm quoting because I went back and wrote this down. In this particular conversation, the plaintiff, Mr. Worski, Bill Worski, I think was his name. He responded off the off-record shadow docket information. He said, well, he raised back, he said, this is just the way we do things in Texas. He leaned back in that chair. Y'all know what that's code for. He leaned back in that chair. He said, hey, that's just the way we do things in Texas. I said, Lord, have mercy. I was appalled.
Yeah. And so these records that they, you know, these gentlemen agreements, these records, you know, that they so-called had amongst each other, you know, come to find out today, all of these records, they were never submitted. They were never submitted for the record or on the record. And then comes to find out the reason why that it was never submitted is because, you know, these gentlemen agreements that they had and the conversations that they were having, you know, 12 plus times, you know, right, every behind closed doors. And
But correct me if I'm wrong. Mike Howard attempted to file. I don't know if it was a pretrial motion or what he was filing, but because they were using these dinosaur paper, whatever procedures, the file was never the file was never time stamped or signed.
it was never time stamped. It
Right.
was never signed. And when it came, the reason why, you know, Mike Howard never saw it and nobody else saw it because, you know, from our notes today, y'all, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, because I want to make sure I'm giving, you know, the public the correct information. Come to find out, these files, these records, there was someone back there in the judge's drawer or something.
Right. That's what they said. Now you mean to tell me you didn't file this paperwork the way you were required to file it
In the desk.
because it wasn't safe, but you thought a safer place was in your desk?
Top drawer.
Y'all, I don't know if we were at a comedy show today, a poop show,
That's how I felt.
or the playground. I mean, I sat there thinking, are y'all serious?
Well, wait. Before you, now you're going a little bit too far. Listen, I mean, they had a really good reason for doing it, Miss Bates. Okay, I want you to don't just throw it out there like that. They had a really good reason for doing it, and their reason on file today, per my notes, they said it was in the best interest for them to do that to protect the Karmelo Anthony. This was done to protect, you know, Karmelo Anthony, because had they not had their gentleman's agreement and had they not found out about, and we're going to get to this, you know, 300, these 300 instances. We're going to get to that in a minute. But in order to protect Karmelo Anthony, they needed to have these, you know, closed door behind meetings, you know, files, you know, on the top shelf. And they needed to have all this in order to protect Karmelo Anthony, y'all. That's what I heard. Not only just Karmelo Anthony, they also did, to be honest, they did say they had it to protect Austin and the Metcalfs as well, right?
That's what came out of their mouth, but you know what they say about a pair of lips, child.
But Wilson had me dying when he said, "Well, who did you think was going to jump out and snatch Carmelo?"
Absolutely.
I'm telling y'all, these people today, my God.
So, as you said, Ms. Bates, none of the documents, you know, were never ever signed because, I mean, y'all just fill in the blank. I don't know, but there was multiple, you know, off records things that happened in the court that it was just never on record. And from the looks of it, you know, at that point, because they had nothing documented, y'all. I mean, and I know y'all have heard this. If y'all from the, you know, anywhere around the same era that I'm from, you know, they always said document. Have y'all heard that before? And
Yes.
here we are. We're talking about a place, you know, to where is it we're paying our tax dollars to where is it, y'all, listen, they just forgot how to document. And so they didn't document it. And here's another reason why they said that they didn't document it, because they did not want to obscure or tarnish the character's reputation. They're talking about Austin, the Metcalfs, and also the Anthonys. So they decided to do this so they wouldn't tarnish their reputation.
Now, they did allude to who they felt were the greatest threat to him getting a fair trial or to his safety. They we spend so much time with them talking about social media, the bad actors, on social media that were monetizing information from the trial. That was supposedly the biggest boogeyman in this whole scenario today that they kept talking about.
But do y'all see how the media outlet got it all wrong already? Have y'all seen the the scenario they came up with? Like they're only focusing on these text messages from Carmelo. But I said these are people that obviously didn't stay past lunchtime, right? Because that was dispelled and debunked after lunch, those messages. But it's just interesting how the media has it all wrong. They're honing on to these text messages from Carmelo and saying, oh, that he's lucky that that wasn't entered because it would have been worse for him. So it's interesting
Yeah,
how the media can sway opinion.
yeah, and then listen, it was just the defense just flat out, y'all, 100%. They just left out a lot of information that it actually could have been used in court, and we come into that, y'all, because I think that's going to be like the tipping point, and this whole live tonight, this show tonight, so that everybody can see how if you don't have all the information in front of you, it's going to be very difficult for you to make a logical decision on if you need to go to the left or if you need to run to the right. It's going to be hard for you to do that unless you got all that information in front of you. And the defense, they just left out a lot of information, even within the punishment here. And to my knowledge, there was no evidence had been submitted towards the punishment phase. Now imagine, y'all, you need a little slap on the wrist or whatever. You done something that you ain't got no business doing, running the traffic light, speeding, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden you get ready to go to trial, and you get down to the sentencing and the punishment phase, and then you find out that just because you were doing 25 and the 35, they're gonna give you 35 years. Does that make sense to y'all? No, absolutely it does not. And so, at that moment, because no information had been submitted for the punishment phase, you know what they said when it got down to the punishment phase? They said, you know what? They took a break right then and there. They took a break and said, you know what? We need to take a break. And again, that was one of those 12 times that they went, in the back door to the chamber, and then they had their closed door, off record. Oh, you want to call it open book? What else we got down there? What other words we got down there?
And then he said part of the threats, he said they were even threatened. They were accused of being woke because they didn't seek the death penalty.
And not to go back to the IT guy, but they even asked the IT guy, can you recall any threats that you had? And and he was honest. He said, yeah, I mean, I did get a couple of emails coming in here and there about threats. And he was like, hey, did you get any threats? The IT guy, Mr. Jackson, he said, no, I didn't get any threats, but you did hear about threats, right? And so he said, yeah, I did hear about threats. So, this whole thing, this whole trial looks like it was based around the boogeyman. It was based around, somebody. Let's not forget this one here. They said that, hey, the trial dates, they didn't want to disclose exactly when the trial dates were gonna, when it was gonna be, and Mr. Jackson was foul because he released that information because they didn't want some racist to come in from out of town somewhere with a big old gun and try to do something. I heard Karmelo Anthony. Did I hear that right, y'all?
That's what you heard. They said they didn't want somebody to put an X on Carmelo. They were so concerned with Carmelo. It was strange.
And so, here's something else to y'all, something else that, in this off record conversation, because it was so many of them. It was asked 10 times if this could be or would be considered as self-defense. That was asked 10 times. Do y'all recall that part? And so once they got down to that, that's when they were talking about the Torres and Elizondo Ease. And then we got to the point to where they talk about the, Russell Wilson got up, and that's when he started, swinging, like his back, was in the corner. He started off and he started talking about a full or partial closure. He laid out 3 things that he wanted to, land and hang his hat on. Number 1 was a full or partial closure. Mm-hmm. The second one was the Waller dispute, and the third one was the provocation of instruction. Now, people, they drove, miles and miles and miles and miles around, to see this trial, y'all. I mean, it was today, I talked to some brothers that was in the court. They were attorneys from D.C., and I'm going to see if I can get them on the show here too, y'all, because they had some pretty interesting takes on what was going on. However, people drove from all around to see this particular trial, and it was on we don't know if it was on the record or not, but it was brought up that there was supposed to be an overflow room, right, for anybody that wanted to actually come in and see the trial. They had stated that they would have roughly between 70 to 100 seats. It changed, y'all. And at one time, while I was there on yesterday, they said, oh, it's probably going to be about 60 seats. Then the 60 seats, they come to find out that they let 100 people in. So it just kind of like changed from day to day. But when you drove 1,500 miles, and you think you're going to get there, and then all of a sudden, to my knowledge, allegedly, the judge changed how things were going to proceed during the court, and there was no overflow room. Now, that's when Russell Wilson, said, well, okay, well, all right, well, who decided to do this, and on what grounds did you guys decide to do this? And I'm looking here, at the notes, and he said, where is it on record, and where's it? And then again, they went back to what they call it, off the record, the old school way.
They didn't talk about how during the trial, how they made us park way up the street. We couldn't even park on the parking lot. We had to park at it was some other building that was down the street that we had to walk to if we got there before 7 o'clock or so.
And that was the first trial, or was this
the first
trial?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Okay, and so they begin to talk about we have to throw this in there too, though, y'all, because listen, we got kind of started late with our live too, because technology is just something that it's kind of got a mind of its own, right? I had audio technical difficulties before we got started with the live today, but between today and yesterday, I think the TV must have flicked off somewhere right around about 10 times, and it was like I said, it was at some pretty peculiar places within the video, and then sometimes we would have audio, and then sometimes we would have video. Yesterday it was times where we had 3 TVs, then we had 4 TVs, then we had no TVs. And and I'm not bringing this up to bash Collin County, but when you think about it, again, this is a place that we're paying our tax dollars to. Then you would think that this would be something that you just wouldn't expect that, right? I mean, you expect to be able to get a live stream in this room and that room. If you need to stream over in China, you expect for them being a state facility, you would expect for them to have those capabilities. Wouldn't you all agree?
In 2026, surely. Because it made me wonder, do they even know how to send emails? Or they ain't sending emails, they're using telegrams over there. What's going on?
Right. All right, so I guess we better go ahead and get to Mr. Michael. I'd sit there, y'all, and I listened to Michael Williams, and the way the way that they were just drilling him, I guess I don't know if we ever got just a 100%, just like a yes or no out of anything that he was saying, because it would be asked a question, and a question such as, hey, did you file these motions, or did you ever get a received copy, a signed copy of these motions? And he would always come back and say something along the lines of, yeah, well, that was my intent to do it, but I had no way to receive them because they were in the judge's desk.
Now, is this the Mike Howard, or who was the representative from the school? Because I thought the representative from the school came before the attorney. Wasn't it a representative from the school that was talking about all the accusations and the laundry list of things that these guys had been involved in? I think that came before they got into with the attorney.
With Michael Howard.
Yes. Right before Mike Howard, if I'm not mistaken, they had a representative from the school that was talking about various complaints. That's when it came in that they had called the teachers the names, and then about the accusations about the cheerleaders. They were talking about their hands were bad, that they could hit women or men.
Yeah, that was Mike Howard that brought that out.
Yeah, and that was Mike Howard. Yeah.
Okay.
That's where that's why we got the Mike Howard, because Mike Howard had some pretty interesting things to say too. And I've watched that video several times, and I don't know if you guys have been able to see a video other than what I've seen already, but every video that I saw, I mean, sure, you can see that it was some motion or some movement or a silhouette or a body, but I didn't know who was who up under the tent, unless I just want to take a wild guess, and then I just went off of skin color. But other than that, I didn't know who was who, because I've never been able to see a clear video. Have you guys been able to see one just yet?
So
I haven't seen a clear video, but allegedly they said there's one out there.
Yeah. During the first trial, there was a gentleman and a young lady. It was at least 2 or 3 people that were there. So when everything first happened, before they started doing this shadow stuff, back room type stuff, individuals were allowed to go to the school and request to see the video, and several people did do that, from my understanding. And I know there were a few people at the first trial that said they did, and they all gave a description of what they saw.
Right. Let's put this in the text too. Content creators are now labeled as monetized. No, we try to monetize off of murders.
For clicks and money, I think that's what he said.
And he said this is all about racist coming into it. Oh yeah, racist coming into the town to take Karmelo out, and everything was done, safely to protect him. Facebook, the monetizers, they launched a campaign about the court reporters. One of the court reporters. Oh yeah, I forget about that story. One of the court reporters, inside of the Collin County Courthouse, says that there's some a Facebook group, or there's some Facebook monetizers. They launched a smear campaign, about a court reporter to get her fired, and he says that whatever these Facebook monetizers were doing, the defense said, we know that she didn't do that. There's no way possible, that she would have done that. Okay, and so now we have to do this, y'all. We got to discuss the gag order. They mentioned that the gag order was put in place to calm down the nature of the threats and kind of push out misinformation merchants. And he said that, hey, they had so much they had to do in order to protect Karmelo Anthony, and they just can't account for all the things that they needed to do and to say off record to keep their gentlemen's, agreements. And, one of the things, that came out that just kind of like struck me, y'all know y'all ever been in a relationship before. Y'all know you have a bad day, you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or whatever the case may be, and you're in a relationship with somebody, you may send some things over in text message or whatever, to where is it when you wake up in the morning, you just want to slap yourself because you know that that's not something that you should have sent. Well, I'm bringing it up, y'all, because it's a relatable situation, and I think I'm sure some of us, or most of us, we've probably done this before. But at any rate, I'm bringing it up because that came up about Karmelo Anthony. The fact that they said that his girlfriend, her name is Valerie, right, y'all? Valerie, him and Valerie got into an argument. And now this was a day before everything happened underneath that tent. Karmelo and his girlfriend had an argument. They both were exchanging things back and forth in text. Karmelo Anthony's phone all of a sudden went out. And looks like, from what I understand and from the terminology that they were using, Karmelo Anthony has an iPhone. So Karmelo Anthony, they were texting back and forth. Karmelo Anthony's phone went dead. And I know from experience that, if your phone goes dead, obviously you ain't going to be able to get no text messages. And the minute you either plug the phone up, or either you go and connect your phone or go to a computer and you connect to the iCloud, then all those messages start coming in. Now, the Metcalfs have a number of things, and we're going to see if we can list as many of them as we can. But there's so many, y'all, we probably won't even be able to do it. But I'm gonna see if we can, because it's a group of us here to do that. They said that because Karmelo Anthony and his girlfriend had an argument, and it was alleged or said that was the reason why Karmelo Anthony was aggressive and was on edge, and that's why the whole altercation happened between Austin and Karmelo. Correct me on that one, y'all.
Right, but they proved that to be wrong because, again, his phone died. And so when those messages came in, they even talked about how they interviewed the girlfriend, and I think she was the one that, I'm not going to say that, because I may have that mixed up with one of the others. I know it was someone they said they interviewed, and then after she interviewed with the plaintiff, she came back. She had a totally different story. Was that the same? Was that the girlfriend?
Yes, absolutely right. So she specifically, right? She debunked that theory that they were saying that, oh yeah, we had an issue or we had broken up because, by the time Karmelo made it to the track meet, look, everything was all peaches and cream, right?
Right. They were fine. There was no issue. They didn't break up. So had they been allowed, and that was where some of that fighting came. I don't want to use the word fighting, but some of the back and forth went in the courtroom about, because had they allowed, that was that partial, they weren't allowed to bring evidence. They weren't able to touch that evidence. They weren't able to explain that wasn't the case, because it was one picture painting that wasn't necessarily true. And that was they were saying that they weren't allowed to bring it in.
Right. Not only that, after they went back and they got Karmelo Anthony's cell phone, they found some things in his cell phone. And one of the things that they found in the cell phone, it said that a text that says, "I'm low key on the verge." But we don't know. I mean, what could that have meant? The verge of what? We don't know. As a child, sometimes, you may we all don't put some things that, like I said, we, probably shouldn't have put in text before. But after them going back and doing their investigation, doing their forensic on the phone, that also was debunked, that it had no significance to anything violent or malicious from Karmelo Anthony. Now, on the other hand,
so I just looked it up, because when they said that in the courtroom, of course, we don't have our phones, so we can't look up anything.
right.
So I asked my best friend, Chad, and I said, what is the slang? I'm on the verge, because it sounded like it was some slang that these kids use. And again, we didn't have our phones, so we couldn't look it up. But it says here, I'm about to cry. I'm on the verge. I'm close to quitting. It doesn't necessarily mean that somebody's about to commit a crime or harm anybody, but they're reaching a breaking point.
Right.
And it could have been reference to anything. It could have been about school. Kids are under stress all the time, and it was just saying, I'm at a breaking point. It didn't necessarily say that I'm about to do something to someone.
Now listen, that was what I would say. I think that was, pretty much the gist of the things that they had on Karmelo Anthony. Can y'all think of anything else that they said that, they brought up and that was kind of like they decided to keep off the record for Karmelo Anthony? Because, if there's not anything else that you guys have notes on, I just don't see anything else here from my notes, then we're going to move to the Metcalf. I'll take that as a no. So
they did mention, and again, because I like to put everything out there so people can make their decision one way or the other. I don't want to
absolutely. Yeah.
Especially when people weren't able to be in the courtroom. I didn't really understand what they were talking about, but I think I'd heard it before. Something about Karmelo attended something in Louisiana, some type of school or something. I don't know if something happened. He went to some program or something in Louisiana. Did y'all hear something like that?
I heard it, but it was confusing. I couldn't understand if they were talking about Austin or Karmelo. It was confusing to me.
They were talking about Karmelo, because I've heard it before today. I heard it before today. So it wasn't my first time hearing it. But from my understanding, it was something years and years and years ago. Maybe even elementary. I mean, it was something years and years and years ago, and I think they tried to make it seem like it was some type of behavioral program or something. Is that what y'all heard?
I did. You know what? I did hear that. However, it just wasn't clear, and it just wasn't something that just like raised my antennas up to where as if it just made me say, "Oh, well, this is an awful individual." Unlike the fact that I when they start talking about Karmelo Anthony, they start talking about the behavioral issues, that these two young men were having. They said that, oh, it was really nothing out of the ordinary because you know what? Hey, they're kids, and kids they just like to fight. And then they said that they were known. They also tried to say that Karmelo was known for guns and drugs. And I've never heard anything about guns and drugs before.
Right.
And then, the thing that bothered me the most, and, I think if this had come out, then I think this would have definitely, kind of swayed the jury's decision. But, but per the clip I just played, it's here in my notes that, the Metcalfs, they had went around town somewhere writing racist graffiti. Now, I think, if that had all come out, then I think that would have definitely changed the outcome of the trial. And listen, y'all, not only were they out here just, writing out here, and they not only were they just writing the graffiti, y'all, it was in green paint too.
And they said they often use the N-word. And I think they said something about KKK, kill all the black people. Did y'all write that down? I heard that at one point. And I know we've gone on to the Metcalfs, but I do want to make it clear, whatever they were talking about in reference to Karmelo about some program he attended in Louisiana, none of us on the call are clear about that. I was confused in the courtroom, so I want to make sure for the record that that was something I think the plaintiffs tried to bring up, and I didn't really understand what they were talking about. It wasn't clear then, and I'm unclear about it, and I'm on the call with several other people. None of us were very clear on it. So I do want to make sure the record states that. But yes, and they spent almost an hour going through, and I know over 36 different incidents as it relates to the Metcalf. They were menaces.
Yeah, there was 300 accounts or recordings of incidents. It's sort of like Austin had a video diary of all these incidents he had. So I think we went through like maybe 40 something in court today, but there was over 300.
And when I sat there and heard all of that, I thought, now didn't I see where the father was trying to start some mentor program? Y'all, I'm not even going. I'm gonna keep that to myself.
Oh well, yeah, no, he is. I think he's got a non-profit, and he's actually he's got someone assisting him to build that non-profit. But
yeah, but he probably should have started that a couple of years ago and started it at home.
So all of this evidence, Wayne finished with all those incidents, the Metcalfs had, but all this evidence, y'all, they said it was held back. Like I said before, not just to protect Karmelo Anthony and the Metcalfs. They said that it was also held back so that it can push the case forward. Now, how do y'all think that this would help push the case forward? And y'all were there, y'all got the notes. How is this going to help you push the case forward when you're hiding character flaws of both, the defense and the prosecution. How does that work? Well, they said that it benefited Karmelo. By them doing that, it benefited Karmelo. And the district attorney also said that had they not done that, he says, can you just imagine the sentence that Karmelo would have gotten had I not?
I think I would have rather information about both students, both of them, the good, bad, and ugly of both students, and even the witnesses, even the brother, all of that, because you give an assignment to the jurors, you have an expectation of them. They had a job to do, but you withheld very important information for them to do their job fairly, and that's not right. They should have given all the information about all the students, both of the students, and allowed the jurors to do their job. But instead, others made decisions for them and gave them partial information.
And if you don't have all the facts, like I said earlier, it's just going to be hard for you to make a decision on what you need to do. And they never talked about, well, yeah, actually they did. They talked about, Karmelo Anthony testifying, what Karmelo Anthony testifying would look like. And they're saying that the prosecutor says that Karmelo Anthony, he made the best decision by not taking the stand, but he wished that he would have taken the stand. And this is because of some 404 cases / agreements. Did anybody get any more notes on that? And we're getting into the provocation, part of it here. Right now, we're probably at about, we're about at 11:55, right before we got ready to go and take lunch. That's where we're at. Y'all recall that, where he starts talking about the 404 cases, the agreements, and he talked about the provocation, the pretext. Anyone remember any of that? Nope.
That was this morning. I mean, that was in the morning session or in the afternoon?
Well, we're here at 11.
You said 11:04.
Yeah, that's right there at lunch.
That is in my notes. I saw it somewhere. I can't find it. Yeah, I can't find it.
Okay. All right. So, let's see here. Where am I now? Okay. Yeah, we didn't finish, and I think we need to go ahead and make sure we wrap this section here of it up too, because a lot of these things, they just were not available to the public. The public had no idea that the Metcalfs had this type of temperament about themselves. We already talked about the graffiti, right? The graffiti, basically says KKK, as you says, kill all black people. And this was actually an offense to whereas if the police were called, right? This particular incident, Because I know a lot of people want to say, oh, it's fake news. Oh, y'all just making it up. Or I ain't no way that happened. And they want to say, prove it. Well, there is a body camera footage for this particular incident because the police were called out and they found this fact about the graffiti and all that vulgar language. They found that to be 100% true. It was written in green spray paint. There was another instance. There was a phone text, that says, you know what? I'm going to kill that MF. Now, this is from, the cell phone records that they said, hey, there's somebody, I'm going to kill them, MF. And a lot of things from what they're saying, which kind of like I can kind of like see this happen because I mean I had a younger brother, I've got younger brothers, and then I had older brothers too. But they're saying from the looks of it is that every time something happened or an incident between the two of these twins, young men, Hunter and Austin, it would always be Hunter that would lead first, and then Austin would follow behind. And that's how this incident happened underneath the tent.
And that was repeated. Mr. James is quoting, because I have that in my notes. And again, I know part of the point of tonight was for us to share what we heard with you all. But I wish we could paint the picture of the emotions in the room. They went on. People were just really, I think we all were just in disbelief for the period of time that they kept going through. I know they talked about the memorial student that said that Mr. Austin bullied them and used the racial slurs like black a-hole, the N-word, and then about the cheerleader situation. They were called slurs there. And then I have pages, and the 13 female student had to be sent to the hospital due to being assaulted. And frequency, she said that she was frequently targeted by the Metcalf twins. Then there was a female juvenile in 2024. There was an incident report made where the Metcalf twins had assaulted another young lady. Then the Metcalf twins, y'all, here's another. I mean, they go on and on and on and on. Number 15. The Metcalf twins kicked out of the game due to the twins bullying and fighting another student. Then they, I don't know if this was a video or text, and it said something. I was about to beat the F out of these kids. That was what they quoted them. Then in 2024, various teachers made reports that the twins were showing aggression and bullying and calling the teachers. That man said often they had records that they often called the teachers fat ABs, weak A's, they were kicking chairs, throwing backpacks. Y'all, all we doing is repeating what they told us today.
That's all.
Yeah. Then in 29, then they went to Austin's report. Something about a gun. I was a little confused on that part. They were saying something about a gun, and then they were saying, okay, I'll show you what it sounds like tomorrow. It was supposed to have been a threat to somebody, and it was like, oh, you just wait to the next day and I'll show you what that's like or something. And then he says something about December the 9th of 2024, I believe was the date. Anger, something, they went to some type of camp or something maybe. And they were saying that the concerns that were listed by one of the gentlemen, the kids, was anger, lust, and addiction. He was consumed by anger and repeatedly got into fights and got kicked out of stuff. Then they talked about these videos and the bullying, the use of the N-word. toward African American students, heavy on the ER, and they were laughed and mocked in these videos. More violence toward students and racist remarks. Y'all, I mean, literally, I got pages. This is not something we're making up. This ain't our opinion. These are just things, just trying to quote the laundry list, because they spent a long time going through a lot. And everybody in the room, we were just kind of like, because for many of us, this was our first time hearing these things.
First time.
And we were just kind of like, now, we're not going to make this, we're not going to bring the race thing in here, but I do know most students, period, just most students, if you were cutting up like this in school, I can't even understand why these kids were still in school.
Yeah. 100%.
They would have been dispelled or suspended or something. It was a lot. And again, this is not something, y'all, we're making up. We're just basically repeating what was shared today. And I was writing this. I was trying to write as fast as I could to get it all down. And it was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. And it's almost, it was, to me, the way that I saw it, it doesn't seem like it was ever like isolated events, right? It's from the way it was described. It was described per the police reports and all the other evidence, and you know, Miss Para, you know, how she recorded the coach star and all these, how they, you know, recorded all these different instances or all these different incidents. It was brought up to as factual that Hunter and Austin, they moved in concert. So where you saw one, you would typically always see the other, and if it was going down, then they both would be there. And the day of, okay, now we're here to the day before. What was it? April the 2nd, 2025, when this incident happened around this tent. Coach Starr told Austin and Hunter that they could not attend this particular event. They said that you cannot participate in the track meet of April the 2nd. So technically, from the notes and from what we witnessed and heard today in court, they were not supposed to be there at all. However, they did come back around and say that, hey, the coach, they talked to the coach, and then they said, oh, it was kind of like a little slap on the wrist. We're not gonna, we don't worry about that. Am I quoting that right, y'all? Did y'all hear that right? However, they weren't supposed to be there. And so when they went through Austin Metcalf's phone, they noticed that there was 300 plus fight-related search requests for videos on his phone. Am I quoting that right, y'all?
Right. I think someone else on the call mentioned that earlier too. And y'all, I know it's a different topic for a different day. But if I was in education, just thinking about it, it's really sad. It's sad on every level, because obviously, even if we don't work in education, we've heard that the normal protocol is when you see that students have behavioral things going on, that, you know, you do a little further investigation, maybe have a, what do they call it? It's been a long time.
Intervention.
Like a counseling session with the parents or something, a parent teacher meeting or something, because possibly it could have been something else going on. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's just really sad to see this repeated behavior. And I just wonder, did anybody reach out to try to see, you know, was everything okay at home with these kids? Because oftentimes it is, and again, I'm not an educator, but from my understanding, you would assume and wonder and try to investigate to make sure the kids are safe at home, that everything's okay at home, that there's not something else going on, because it is often said that behavior problems manifest out of other situations. And the continuous, this is not normal for any set of kids to have that many behavioral issues. So it's sad.
Also, I think it's important that we go ahead and include this in there too. I'm trying to make sure that we get all this information out to the public as much as we can today, because it was all, you know, as Nancy Grace said, it was a bombshell for me. But there was an agreement, y'all. One of the there's an agreement for Parrott not to testify because they felt like it would hurt the case. If Karmelo knew how, I believe this, you know, Parrott guy, Nettleson, or what, I can't remember his name, Nettleson, but I have Nettleson here. But they felt like this would hurt the case if Karmelo had found out that his friend, as we say friend, he say friend, but his so-called friend was actually talking, you know, behind his back and calling names and things like that. So they figured that it would be best if this particular guy, he not testify, you know, at all. Okay, and so that brings us to the date of the actual tent incident. It was put out that Karmelo Anthony was the aggressor. You know, that's something that, you know, I've heard several times throughout the media. Y'all, I done heard this, you know, day in and day out. They say, hey, you know, Karmelo, you know, he was the one that did it. He did it. He was the aggressor. Then come to find out, y'all, you know, it was understood today, for the first time I've heard it put this way, that Karmelo Anthony was sitting down. He was approached by, what was it, 5, 6 guys, and they had him, they were surrounding him with the shape of a U. And I mean, y'all can just imagine. I can only imagine what I would have done if I seen, you know, 6 guys approaching me and I'm sitting down and they done put me in the bottom of the U. I can only imagine, you know, what I would have done. But again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier, to where when you saw Austin, you saw his brother, and they both were all moving in unison. And then they also talked about, did y'all get any, I think we got down to, you know, it's about 2:55 now. We got down to the communication thread with number 53. This was right before we went on our 2:55 break. It was a communication thread that they were saying to the public. Are y'all following that? Are y'all tracking that or no? It was kind of a blur at the moment, but I just, my notes are here with the number 53 behind it. And this, you know, well, it was a communication thread in regards to one of the incidents that Austin and Hunter had done. It's 53 here. Are y'all tracking it or no? This is at 2:55 right before the break. You're not tracking it. Okay. All right. So we go on break, y'all. Here, we come back on break about 3:05. Russell Wilson gets back up. He takes. He begins to ask about self-defense. And they want to know, well, who was the aggressor and who was the one that's doing the provoking that day? This is the question that Russell Wilson proposed. Who was doing the provoking that day? He says, was Karmelo Anthony the aggressor? And they said that they had witnesses about, between 33 to 34 witnesses. And they said all the witnesses that came forward were witnesses that were friends with Hunter and Austin Metcalf. But they didn't make the statement that Austin was the aggressor. And he often had a vulgar mouth and so forth and so on. They didn't state that he was the aggressor when in fact he was the aggressor. And so Mr. Werski's theory, it led to Karmelo to being labeled as the aggressor, but the state kind of said, you know what, we've got our gentleman agreement. We're not going to use that. All right, we're not going to use that. So they did not put that into their off-record. Well, that was something else they put in their off-record notes. Then at this time we're at like 3:30, y'all. The cameras went out in the courtroom again. And so we sitting there, wondering, what we're going to miss if the cameras are going to come back on. Stone. Yeah, then they also talked about 2021, his 2021 incident with Austin Metcalf. It was a text about, hitting someone. That text was in his phone. Then they had, like I said, it was a well over about 300 incidents of violence. And then we're here now at 3:35, y'all, the TV to went out again. And I think you mentioned this earlier, Ms. Bates. I think you mentioned it earlier, that in October 2024, somehow or another, they went through the phone of Karmelo Anthony. It was something on there that said something along that, hey, I'd like to lick the blood, blood off of the blade or something along those lines. This text message was sent to his girlfriend, but however, this text message was not one of the events or an event that led to any violence from Karmelo Anthony. So again, this also was something else that was not put on the record. It was, kind of one of those gentleman agreements that they decided that they are not going to put on the record. Let's see what else we got here.
I do believe they said on the day of the incident that there were multiple statements to the police that mentioned that Austin was the aggressor, but I'm not sure.
Right. I want to say I thought they said they interviewed almost 30 some students.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that they all said the same thing, that was the case. But then I don't know if they didn't say this. Again, I'm just assuming, I don't know, because they made reference to the fact that when it came time for these kids to need to testify, they were on vacation, they couldn't make it in, they were sick or something. I don't know if somebody threatened these poor kids or what. Wasn't that the same conversation when that came up?
Yeah, somewhere in that area, they said that it was kind of hard to get people to come in and testify on behalf of Karmelo Anthony because Michael says that people were leaving town, they were, leaving the country. And I said,
But it was documented in the initial interviews, and I'm supposing that's with the police department or the investigators. The initial interviews was stating that all of those kids said that he was the aggressor. And didn't y'all hear that too?
Austin was the aggressor.
Correct.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's documented. That was not on the record, but it's on the record. It was, one of those the gentleman agreement that they had, that they, just didn't push, towards, the public. And, again, like we said before, our goal tonight is to make sure we get all of the information or the information that we received today from the court and make sure we get that out. We also, we can't forget about this too. They also said that, Karmelo Anthony, he had an issue, with his girlfriend, and I think we discussed it already. And they decided to say that, he was stalking, the girlfriend, Valerie, and then they went back and then they found out that, oh yeah, that's not true. Right.
Right. Now let me ask you, didn't something come up about him having epilepsy?
Right. They
didn't go as much into that as I would have liked for them to, but it was mentioned.
Right. Right. It was. And Russell Wilson, not to change that, because we're coming up to that. Russell Wilson, wanted to know, listen, why was it reduced to the gentleman agreement, or why was it reduced to just writing and not on the record? And Mike Howard, I found out today that a lot of things were blamed on content creators, a lot of things were blamed on the social media, and that's what Mike Howard said when Russell Wilson started dropping and hammering. He wanted to find out why was this why was the agreement reduced, and Mike Howard immediately said, oh, it was because of the social media and the lack of clerk docs, because they figured that if it was leaked, then what good would that do the gentleman's agreement? And let me make sure I cleared it up for y'all too. It was not put on paper because they were afraid that it would be leaked. And if it were to be leaked, then Mike Howard says, if it were leaked, then what good would the gentleman's agreement be? So they're saying that that's one of the reasons why this was not put on the record or in paper. That's why they decided to go about with this gentleman agreement. And that's when I guess things start going haywire for Toby, because Toby said, oh man, I'm gonna need some backup, y'all. I need some help. And that's when Michael, that's what Michael said. You know what? Hey, listen, I'm gonna need some help. I need some help, y'all. That's when he brought in Toby, and that's how Toby got involved, because he brought him in as what they call a second chair counsel. And they're also saying that this guy Toby that they brought him in because he was familiar with the case. He was also familiar with Judge Worski. He said that he knew exactly how Judge Worski operates, and they felt like bringing Toby on as a second chair counsel would be an excellent idea. Am I right with that, y'all?
That's correct, because they said that he had some relations with the prosecutor, Worski. He knew how he thinks. So
Your phone is glitching on us. It's going in and out. What did you say?
no, I'm just saying what you said is correct. They felt that he had a relationship with Worski, and he knew how he thought that would be valuable to the team.
Can anybody understand it? Because it wasn't clear on this end. All right, so back to Judge Worski. There was, again, there was a couple instances where they talked about Judge Worski and how Judge Worski would go and he would, raise his voice. And then they wanted to, they asked Mike Howard, saying, Michael, why is it that, Judge Worski, why was he raising his voice? And Michael Howard's response was, because he didn't feel well. He didn't feel well. And they all agreed that, regardless of, what didn't happen in the past, all the, things that Hunter and Austin had done and the things that they're saying that Karmelo Anthony has done, they all said that, here's what we need to do. We can go ahead and put this in the chat too. They said that, whatever we do, we need to keep this case so that it focuses on everything that happened underneath the tent. And that's when Russell Wilson came in and said, all right, so who was underneath the tent? Who was underneath the tent? Well, obviously, by, the results of what happened, we know a few people that were underneath the tent. And so after Russell Wilson said was who was underneath the tent, Mike says that included, everybody that was underneath the tent. There were people that were surrounding the tent, people that was, that was slightly above the tent, to the left and to the right of the tent. He said that's who he was referring to when he was talking about, what happened underneath the tent. Val, are you there? What do you want to add to this?
Hey, I'm here. I don't want to add anything to this portion, but I we missed out on a lot of things that Austin did that people need to hear. There's a lot more things that we didn't touch, like he calling teachers big fat B word, and he was very disrespectful to his teachers. He called them names. So not only that he did it to students, he also did it to adults. Very disrespectful. They were bullies, and there was many different things.
Now that I don't know what you just did, but your audio just came in real clear. And so, yeah, I did hear you saying that, one of the things he did call, the teachers the B word.
Yes, and he did it more than once. It was like several times he did it.
And did you hear anything about somebody collarbone got fractured or something like that?
It was a 10-year-old, her shoulder, and that's the one who was hospitalized.
Was that a female
Yes,
or
it was
was
a
that?
girl.
So you mean to tell me? And I know I heard something like that, and I heard all I have written here is that something happened to the shoulder, and then you can elaborate on it here in a second, but. From my understanding, this was a female, right? These
Mhm.
boys was out here beating up on women.
Yes. Disrespecting women, calling them names, beating them. Remember, he said his hands are bisexual, so that should tell you everything.
All right, and so we talked about. And anytime you want to jump in, because I've got my notes here. It was so many. Y'all know when we were sitting there, we were trying to. Russell Wilson was going through all those incidents. He went through those incidents, man. It was like, you blink your eye, you were out of there because it was so many of them. And I know he was trying to get through it, so it just wouldn't prolong the day. But it was a lot of things, that when he started talking about those incidents, it was a lot of things that we just couldn't just like write down as thorough as we would have liked to, but I think we kind of hammered it out and got the gist of most of them, right?
They actually told us about 53 out of 300, so there was a lot more that we don't even know about.
Let's see. So we got under the 10. All right. So this part when they start talking about underneath the tent, y'all, Russell Wilson directed this question to Mike Howard, and he says, when you say let's keep this underneath the tent, wouldn't you say that we just kept this underneath the tent? Wouldn't you say that lacked credibility? And Mike Howard said, yeah, because it did not include Karmelo Anthony.
I thought when they made that reference, I thought that was going back to the little handshake deal they made behind closed doors. My understanding of that phrase was saying, whatever conversations we talk about in this trial, limit it to what occurred under the tent.
Underneath the tent, absolutely.
That was what my understanding for that phrase to be repeated, that was repeated so often, not to talk about anything else that occurred outside of the tent. Because if so, that was going to break the back room agreement that they had or something, or that it would possibly, they were trying, this is the thing that was bothersome, is that they were strategically trying to prevent different opening the door, because I want to say they were using that phrase too.
Yeah,
That
open the
would
door.
open the door
Yeah,
to
let's
other
pick that one.
conversations
Mhm.
about character or other conversations about people's past. So it was like it was so many, you can't do this, you can't do that, and then at one point, Mr. What's his name with the W? Worski. He asked Michael Howard. It was kind of like your hands behind. It was like your hands behind your back. You felt like your hands behind your back. He said, "Well, no, it wasn't necessarily that both of your hands behind your back, because you still had one hand." Y'all remember that?
I do.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I do. And so, back to this, open the door thing. That was another one of those words. I got those. I had to write those down because they just, coming in these terms and just coming in and hitting me all inside the head. I was unfamiliar with them. Russell Wilson, as if the door is open, it would be open to all, right? Things, that had been experienced, it would be open to all, but that wasn't the case. It wasn't open to all. The door wasn't open to all. It was only open to the Metcalfs. Then Russell Wilson wanted to know how did the door open? And Mike Mike said something, and this is when they got into something, and this is kind of weird too. I'm still trying to figure that out. Where they start talking about Karmelo Anthony is a member of a chess club, meaning that Karmelo Anthony is a saint or a choir boy, or something along those.
Smart. They said smart and nerd, smart or something, intelligent or something like that. That's would suggest, or maybe that's what because I maybe that's what the person next to me said, because I was asking like, well, what's the big deal here? Because they were like, they didn't want the public to know that he was a chess player.
Right.
No, the prosecutors use that as an excuse to say, oh, well, now y'all
The door's open.
reneged on the agreement. Is my mic better now?
It is.
Okay. The prosecutors use that as an excuse to say, oh, now y'all reneged on the agreement, and now the door is open. Because y'all mentioned that in your opening statement that Carmelo was a part of a chess club, even though they didn't make that objection at that time, they waited towards the end of the trial to say, oh, y'all reneged on the agreement because y'all made that opening statement. But at that point, the defense already laid out their case, right? So now they can't backpedal and go back and revisit addressing Austin's character, bringing Austin's character into the case. So I just think that the prosecutors were playing chess, and Carmelo's attorneys were playing checkers because they got played.
I mean, listen, they got played, big time. I mean, it was almost to the point to where as if, you out here, it's like they were playing like a dating game or something, and then you all of a sudden you just, pull like an abracadabra or whatever, and then you just like, disappear. They had Mike Howard to show all the cards. They made him put all his cards on the table. He had no cards left to play. The big joker gone, all the aces gone. He ain't have no hearts or nothing. They made him put all his cards on the table. Once he put all those cards on the table, it was just as you said. That's how they got him, and they tied the hands behind the back. Am I telling that right, y'all? Because that's what I got out of it when I said, I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I play cards every now and then. I'm not a professional, no, but I played them several times, and every time I played cards, and not one time have I ever took the cards and then I turned it around so everybody could see my hand, right? Have y'all done that?
No, but that's what he had to do in this case. He showed his whole hand. Every question that he was going to ask, he had to run it through the prosecutor to make sure he wasn't opening this door. And still in the end, they was like, oh, well, you did open the door when you said that he was part of the chess club. So now all bets are off.
All right. Now, he opened the door. When they opened the door, that's when all hell broke loose right there. And that's when an argument broke out. And then they had to go back there. One of those 12 times they went back there to the chamber, they had to go back there and they had to talk about that because they said when he brought this chess up, Mike Howard had violated their gentleman's agreement, their agreement towards the open book. They said that he had violated, and so all these things were no longer on the table, and they got upset. So they go back to the bag. Then so they come out the bag, and then they cool off. Russell Wilson says, After that happened, do you believe that they acted in good faith of did they act in good faith after they did that? Did they act in good faith? And Mike Howard says, well, you know what? And he was trying his best, trying to be what do they call it, politically correct, or he was trying not to rock the boat as much as possible because in the district attorney, he was kind of aggressive, to be honest. Michael Howard says, well, no, Russell Wilson says, do you believe that they acted in good faith? And Mike Howard's response was, well, now the more that I think about it, the more I feel that it was not done in good faith. But I don't know what's in their hearts. Y'all recall that part?
Yep.
Yeah, that was when they were getting a little mushy.
The roses came in.
Yeah, because, and then it was did somebody tell them to break it up or something? Because they kept going back and forth before they got to that point. I was like, no, let them fight it out. I want to hear. Let it all out. I wanted to hear everything. And then he asked him to look him in his eyes. I'm like, have some backbones, put some bass in your chest. It was like he was scared to answer.
Yeah, and so he was scared to answer, and so Russell Wilson. And I got to tell you, man, listen, this guy, the way that he, just took his time. Looks like I was telling somebody earlier today that Russell Wilson kind of reminds me of that uncle. Your favorite uncle that you got that you just want to go and just sit down and talk to him and just tell him everything. He makes you do that. And the way that he was handling this whole case, I think that kind of made Mike Howard really start to open up. But because y'all notice how but at the beginning how Mike Howard was kind of like a little bit distant. He was kind of like shut off, closed off. He was answering the questions, but he wasn't like giving you that the meat and potatoes to go with the question. Y'all remember that part?
I did feel like he opened up more, as the questionings continued.
I agree. And so when Russell Wilson said, ask Mike Howard, so if the door is open, then how wide is it open? And I think that was a moment in the courtroom right there, because that to me that was funny, because if it's open, then how wide is it open? Mike Howard says, at no time did they approach the door, or did they open it? But for whatever reason, they felt like he did. They felt like he opened the door. And they felt like, their whole gentleman agreement, it just had went down the drain. Let's see what else we got here.
But when you sit back and you think about this and everything that we said, doesn't it sound foolish and childish? We're talking about, oh, you opened a door because you talked about Carmelo being a part of a chess club and this gentleman's agreement. It all sounds really foolish. And it just baffles me. And it was very comical that this is how justice is playing out in Collin County.
Well, you're right, and here's what we gotta look at now. We're talking about some I would think, no, they nobody just didn't give them a job now, right? I would think, um, these are professionals. I mean, people with.
Is that how it came off to you?
I mean, listen. When you say attorney, you would just automatically assume that, hey, you're dealing with a professional, right? I mean, but as you make your statement or your point or to answer your question, no, you don't. Y'all. It almost felt like we was. It felt like all of us just had pulled up to a garage sale, and we was trying to bargain about some uh some old shoes that we all thought we wanted. It was just that type of fiasco. It was one thing after another, and then when you thought you had heard or all, and then as Nancy Grace said, it's another bombshell, and it just it was a lot, and like I said, if you look at the fact that they're professionals, if you look at that fact, you would not think that we would be getting these stories out of just going to Karmelo Anthony's court hearing. You know what I'm saying? Let's see what else we have here. We talked about the witnesses, how they were hiding and they were refusing to be served. Here's something else here too. Although they didn't allow Karmelo Anthony to take the stand, as a witness, Mike Howard says that he felt that Karmelo Anthony would have done extremely well if he had taken the stand. He said he had a real shot at this case being a self-defense. And then the prosecution, they kind of pushed back at it, and they said, well, how so? Y'all call one of the witnesses, and then when you call the one witness, which was the kid from Centennial, I said, well, Centennial High School, that was the one person that they call as a witness for Karmelo Anthony. And he said, hey, listen, everything was going well after I talked to the kid over at Centennial. And then after the kid from Centennial talked to you, it's almost like the kid had a change of heart. He changed his mind and things start, going south, and the guy started changing his story. I mean, y'all remember that part?
I think I had left just before that.
All right, and then they also talk about, they said that the whole trial could have went in a different direction because Russell Wilson says that the state struck down 3 African American jurors. Can y'all tell me why he did that? Yeah, anybody remember that part? Well, he also went on to say, if you had these African American.
Oh,
Go ahead.
yeah. That was because they referenced something about, is that where they said the N word?
Yeah,
They were
said
going to
that.
be sensitive if that word was used, that they felt they would be, it would trigger. Not, they didn't use the word trigger, I don't think. It
Well,
was
they
something
said
related
that.
to the N word.
Yeah, they said that if the jurors had heard that N word, they know that probably would have changed the opinion
Mm-hmm.
of the jurors. Now, it just kind of go back to, all this evidence, that they, didn't give to the jurors. At this stage, y'all, especially after Russell Wilson, asked this question, and I'm coming to, an end here, y'all. Is this Russell Wilson, mentioned, he asked Mike, did you have a clear understanding of the agreement in which you had with the prosecution? Meaning that, hey, did you understand how this open records went, this open book, and all these other terms that we've been using throughout the live? Did you understand that? And Mike Howard says, when it came to the gentleman's agreement, I would honestly have to say no. And at that point, y'all, we're at 5:45. That's when they took a recess. Now I'm curious to hear what y'all got to say. I think right now, from getting all the notes, and all of us, we're putting our head together the way we did today. I think that Karmelo Anthony is on the verge of two things. Either he's on the verge of throwing this trial out altogether, and he just go home, or I think he's on the verge of getting a new trial.
Yeah, and I want to go to my notes on that one, because early that morning, I'm trying not to use my opinions and how sum things up, and that you all just make your own decision. But at one time, the Worski gentleman, he made the statement, well, I know the judge will do the right thing. I know you'll do the right thing. You remember that?
Which one? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That was that morning. He said it that morning. That Worski guy said it to the judge. He said back, I know the judge. I think, he said, I think, here it is right here. I knew I wrote this down. He said, I think you'll do the right thing, judge. I was like, well, what is that supposed to mean? Is that a threat? Like, what is going on? You got another back shadow show going on again? I'm sorry, y'all. But no, when he said it, I wrote it down. Like, what is that supposed to mean? And this is a serious situation. This is a very serious trial. And the entire day, they just been sitting there rolling their fingers across the desk, just tapping their fingers. I'm looking at the screen. They just like they didn't do no preparation. Like, they just sitting here, like, going through the motions. Let's hurry up and get this over with. I need to go play golf, eat, drink, coffee. Like, they got better things to do. Like, it just, I don't know. It's, at times it just seemed like, are they taking this serious?
Right. I felt the same way because Worski didn't present any factual information, any documents. His whole testimony was very dramatic and sensualized. And I agree with you. Everything was coming off the top of his head.
Yeah, it was almost theatrical, almost at times,
Right?
Because and I know y'all witnesses too. Listen, I've seen this 15 and 20 times. Y'all recall seeing this? Y'all remember him doing
all day
rolling
long.
them fingers and rolling back in them seats.
The fingers. I was like, they look like there's a robot. It was because he was moving them. But this one, it took the cake, and every time it was he wasn't doing that for no reason though. It was only after Russell Wilson asked questions along the lines of, if the door is open, how far is it? How much is it open? And when he asks questions like that, then that's he put his head down.
Yeah. And then I don't know, y'all. It's easier for me to just say right exactly what I'm thinking and not try to sugarcoat stuff because it takes me a minute to try to make this politically correct. Just the slang, the slang of using these bad actors. It was a whole bunch of code words today, like this bad actors things. Like, did y'all pick up on it?
When you're talking about the code words referring to the YouTubers or Facebookers or
They used it in multiple because initially the first time they used it, that's who they were referred to. But they used it in other instances in the today, and when they did, it always had it had a description to it. I'm like, yeah, I know what you really want to say, but it's in lieu of saying what you say when you ain't in front of this camera. Bad actors.
right. Listen, I got somebody here in the chat, with a question, and I'll let you take this one. It's and EJ is asking. No, actually, she's making a statement. It's unethical for those words to be used to make decisions on a case of this magnitude. Open the door and gentlemen's agreement. She says, WTH.
Listen, I thought the same thing, but I will tell you, I contact one person. I had other meetings since then, and I wanted to ask a few others because I left thinking, again, this is just some random somebody. I ain't got no law degree, nothing. I'm sitting here thinking, oh, these folks need to be disbarred. This got to be unethical. This is negligence. And again, I don't know any better. So I'm sitting here listening like, surely this is not legal, because basically it came off to me that y'all made a decision before this case even started. And what I really wanted to know, well, since y'all made this good old boy agreement behind closed doors, did you get paid money? Did you get paid off for this? It was as if it was this gamble, like a bet, like you gonna bet on the Super Bowl, who gonna win the Super. It was like this back door, this back room type agreement before the case even started. So I really just left. I feel like that's unethical because you think about it, a person goes and seeks counsel, an attorney for a situation to represent them. So you pay them your money with the expectation they're going to defend and try to help you. All the while, they don't took money and they up here playing a game with their best friend, playing footsie and going on with your money. That was the way I just sat there like, so the one somebody that I called, she said, you do realize they do this all the time. I said, this is unethical. This is negligence. It'll be different if this was someone out that just don't win and got some random little surf. You are a licensed attorney. You are held to a higher responsibility. Mm-hmm. Your licensing comes with integrity. So basically, when the bar, this is my perception with someone like a medical doctor or like a pastor, a minister, you're held to a higher standard. Mm-hmm. My assumption is when you see somebody got a law degree, they passed the bar, that is stating that you have integrity. That your level, you are called to a higher standard. And to hear these people that supposedly are called to a higher standard, you took these people's money and basically you made a backdoor decision. And them people, the Jackson man was saying the Karmelo guy wasn't even included in these conversations that they had. So you took the people money, went in the back room, made a decision on how you going to handle this instead of just putting everything, well, this not going to be there. This is not going to, you intended for this to be a partial trial with partial evidence from the beginning. When I would think your goal would be, let's get everything out so the jurors can make a just, how can you make a just decision if you don't have all the information? And that's part of your responsibility and task, is to go investigate, get all the information out there so that justice can be served and the jurors can do their job by getting the information. You came in, they came into this scene. We're not going to tell them everything. We're gonna paint our own narrative. They didn't even let the folks see the whole video. They pick and chose what was gonna be said. It's like it was rigged almost.
And I'm just confused. Why would Carmelo's attorney ever agree to this agreement? It did not benefit him at all. I'm just confused on the point.
Wait, Ebony.
Yeah,
Wait,
yeah,
Ebony.
yeah.
Did it? Do we know that? That's what I'm saying. It's so much. And think about this. We didn't know this was no backdoor show until they're telling the truth now. So how do we know they're telling everything now? Do we know, did he get some money? We don't know. No one's asked that.
Well,
What
hold
benefit
on.
did you get?
Hold on. I'm gonna see if I can help y'all answer that one right there, because the minute you said that, the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, well, let me just go here and let me see. I needed to find out how much was Mike Johnson paid to represent the Anthony family. Can y'all see that?
I saw that. I heard that. But when you hear about this game that was played with this case, is this just what we know about? You know what I'm saying? Or was it something else at stake that somebody gets something under the table? I don't know what to believe.
Oh, you talking about something like underneath the table or something?
Right. I mean, who knows? Because like you said, what benefit was it to them?
Actually, it wasn't. None of this benefited
But
him.
I'm gonna think that the Anthony family went and sacrificed their son
No.
money.
No. I don't think this is what I don't think that's what CV was saying, right? I mean, it's definitely not, what I was saying, and I don't think they would have done it either. I hope they wouldn't have.
That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm speaking from the perspective: did their legal team, did they get? I'm not talking about the Anthony family. I'm stating, did this legal team, because they said the two lead attorneys were best friends. So was there something else at stake? I don't know. It's just at this point, would we know what we found out today if it had not have been appealed? You see what I'm saying? So they're not going to tell their attorneys this is their game. This is what they were trained to do. They're only going to tell as much as they have to tell. There was a lot of unethical and lack of integrity going on here. So I do not believe they're going to tell what they have to tell.
I agree. I don't think it was just like as they say, it wasn't an open. Like they got an open door, right? They talk about that open door. This wasn't no open book.
Because I would say, honestly, if they would put everything out there on the table, at some point somebody talked about what high regard the Shook and Mike Howard, how they were such great attorneys. I almost feel like you risked your whole reputation. And your whole reputation, you put everything on the line. Because let me tell you something. I may not be right about everything, but what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to sacrifice my integrity behind anyone. And it's like they put it all on the line. But why?
Well, it's not only did he put his integrity on the line, but he also put his livelihood on the line too. Because I mean, at this point, if you just sat there in that courtroom today, you just go back and you listen to this video again, and you listen to some of the other some of the other statements that are being made in the media, and you think about it, man, this ain't no type of attorney I want nowhere near me. I can't be messing with you like that.
That's what that was what my thought is. I don't even see how they even still got licensing after this. This is just like you risk your whole career, livelihood, integrity, reputation for what? That's that for what part is what hasn't been answered. And I don't know if we'll ever have that answer.
I don't think it's gonna, I don't think that may be something else that's gonna be it's gonna have to be a gentleman's agreement. It's gonna have to be off the record in order for us to find it out. I don't think we're ever gonna know that.
I don't think we'll ever know.
And then, at this point, unless, it was a lottery ticket behind it, he really doesn't have a reason to share that with us.
Listen, we're gonna be smarter than that. But they say if it's quack like a duck, smell like however that saying go. Don't let that's one thing you have to conclude now for the rest of our lives, whether you know the truth and the whole truth or not. Don't sit and let somebody try to tell you that sky is red when you know it's blue.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
We have to conclude we just don't know because
Absolutely.
if it don't make sense, it doesn't make it ain't making sense. It ain't sense.
Absolutely. And at this stage, with all the, as we talk about technology and all the tools that are available and accessible to us right now, it's really just not even a place for us to, it's just no space for us to say, I don't know anymore. Because it's the information, we're in the information stage right now, and the technology is allowing you to just look up any and everything that you could ever desire. Some of the stuff you may not even need to be looking at, but it's available and accessible to you. You can, generate this and create that in a matter of seconds. Something that used to take you, hours or a couple of days, projects, digital projects, editing videos and things like that. It would take you sometimes 2 or 3 days to do that. You can just kind of like type the prompt inside of your whatever you use, Chat GPT, whatever it is, and it'll kind of like spit that out for you. So, I agree with you 100%. 100%. Ebony, just give me your closing, arguments, your closing thoughts, and we're gonna get out of here. Y'all know we got to be back in the morning to fight the good fight.
It started.
I feel like Karmelo, like this was absolutely an unfair trial. Karmelo was railroaded with these backdoor agreements, these gentleman agreements. I feel like the prosecutor played chess on this one. And I'm even, and this could be conspiracy. I even feel like they lined up the that clerk that got fired to say that, oh, this is a
IT
reason
guy.
why.
The
Huh?
IT guy. The IT
Yeah,
guy.
the IT guy.
Okay, Mr. Jackson. Yeah.
I feel like all this was all a stage. It was all planned and played out so that they can get the outcome that they wanted. And they already knew uh, how this was going to end, and they made sure they laid it out so that they can get the outcome that they wanted. But Carmelo didn't stand a chance. But I'm glad that he has the dream team that he has now, and hopefully he can finally see some justice because what he is going through, I mean, based on what we heard today, the bombshells that we heard that
Yeah.
Mike Howard dropped
Mhm.
on Austin and Hunter and their character and their track record of bullying and how they target black students and just their racist mindset, you know, I just all of that needs to be in trial because I feel like it would have been a totally different outcome. So I'm just gonna keep Carmelo in my prayers, and I'm just praying that he this motion for a retrial gets granted, and he gets the opportunity to have his case heard and get the fair trial that he deserves.
Miss Bates, how about you?
Likewise for me too. Definitely praying for that young man. But, you know, I am praying for conviction of people's heart. I'm praying because, yeah, a lot of folks claim to be Christian. What do they call themselves? Evangelical Christians and all this old stuff. I'm praying for conviction of people's heart, and for everybody. And definitely prayers for both families. And the reason why I say both families, definitely, we're not going to dismiss that a child was lost. We get that, definitely. But also, it just seems like it's so, in certain communities, we talk about how different issues are swept under the rug and not dealt with. I think we probably can have that conversation for various communities, because obvious there were concerns that were ignored. And I don't know if they were ignored for different privilege or what. I don't know if they were ignored. I don't know why, because some of this could have been prevented if things had been addressed years ago, and that's why I say prayer for both families, for all those that were involved, for the community, and for conviction of hearts, and especially people that are in position to have. There were people in position that could have prevented us from even being here in the first place. Now we're dealing with people that are not doing the right thing as it relates to this trial, the previous trial, and this trial. So that's why I say conviction of hearts, healing of hearts,
Yeah, I would say that I think that the world needs to be healed, if you ask me. I just don't think it's over there in Collin County. I think it's the world. I think here over the past couple of years, I've watched, to where as if, times when you would, open a door for, people, and then they would almost be elated or ecstatic of the fact that you opened the door for them. Now you open the door for people where it's just out of, a casual, everyday, thing that you do, home training, I'd call it. You'd be surprised. Sometimes you do it, you never get a thank you, you never get a, oh, I appreciate it, anything. It's almost as that, some are entitled, or they expect to feel like that you should be doing this for them. So, when you're talking about, healing and praying, yeah, I'm praying for that for the whole world. And then on another note, listen, we're gonna find out tomorrow on how this thing goes. I'm not saying that they're gonna give us a decision on whether or not Karmelo Anthony's gonna get a new trial or not. No, that's not what I'm saying. But on tomorrow, we'll be one step closer to finding out what's going to be Karmelo Anthony's outcome. And then I'm going to say this, and then we'll close out the live. I think with seeing what I've seen today, and I've said this, throughout the day, either if it wasn't in my head, I've even said it to, others that were in passing. Man, I think, it's some Collin County. I don't think that this was something that happened one time. I think if we were to just start digging and picking, I think we may have a sore and it may start to fester. Okay, and I think that there may be some other instances to where as if you've been to court in Collin County, and you know, you didn't get the verdict in which you thought that you deserved, or you didn't get a fair trial, or you feel like your sentence wasn't fair. I think there's something else there, right?
Right. And that's why, you know, it's really sad to me from every direction, because you have kids involved, and it seems like adults have dropped the ball prior to us getting here, and adults have dropped the ball now. So, yeah. But again, I definitely would like, you know, to definitely, you know, again, just stress that we're praying for both families, because there's no win-win in this situation, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, definitely, whether they're right or wrong, or who we believe did what,
Sure.
there still is a child not here with parents that probably are grieving, regardless of what their background, whatever happened, you know. So definitely praying for them. Also praying for the Anthony family, praying for those parents as well. Everybody's hurting. The communities are hurting. But yeah, it's just a sad situation. It is.
All right, y'all. That's it for tonight. You know, if you haven't already, you know, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. If you liked it, hit the like button. My goal is to be back here tomorrow, somewhere throughout the day tomorrow. Once I get to court, and I'm probably going to be there about 7. If y'all planning on coming to show your support for Karmelo Anthony, it's important that you are there. The doors generally open at 7 a.m. in the morning. You can't be on the lot. You can't be there. They don't really let you on the lot unless it's 7 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. 7 o'clock is when you can get in the door. Let me put it that way. 7 o'clock, you can get in the door. But if you're not there by 8:30, 9 times out of 10, court starts at 9, the line is wrapped, you won't be able to get in. So if you're thinking about coming out supporting Karmelo Anthony, make sure you get there at the Collin County Courthouse. Make sure you get there before 8:30. It's, you know, like I said, I'll be there at 7. But if you haven't already done so, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and y'all, we'll see y'all again tomorrow, same time. Thanks for watching.